I'm Tumbleweed Smith, Marshal Ewing's Navy career. Details in a moment on The Sound of Texas. Marshal Ewing of Tyler had to get his parents' permission when he joined the Navy in 1948 at the age of 17. He boarded a train bound for San Diego.
The next morning we were in El Paso. One of the guys said, "Man, I'd sure like to have a cold beer. Why don't we go see if we can find one?" So we went off the train and went looking for a beer. We got back to the station and the daggone train had pulled out and left us. There we were. We hadn't been in the Navy good, and we was AWOL. We caught the next train. It came along about an hour or two later, and we got out to San Diego, and they never did say anything about it.
Did you find a beer?
No, we didn't find a beer.
He became a Navy aviator and flew missions over North Korea in 1952 and 53.
I made 56 missions. I had 3 hops where I spotted for the battleship Missouri. I was up there in my Corsair watching all this. The Missouri would fire over on land, but they needed somebody to kind of tell them where to shoot it. So I'd sat out there about halfway to shore and tell them to fire one, and they'd fire one, and I'd see where it hit, and then I'd tell them to move it right or left or up or down, whatever.
He flew jets and took off and landed on aircraft carriers.
I made 176 landings safely, not a scratch on a plane. Talk about perilous work. When we came back aboard, we'd fly over the carrier in the direction it was sailing, and you're flying about 90 to 100 feet off the water at about 85 to 90 knots. One day I was coming in, and the seas were rough that day. We had about 30-foot swells up and down. The back of that ship was going up and down like you wouldn't believe it. I tried to land 5 times, and I got a wave off. And the air boss says, "If you don't get him down this time, shoot him down."
Marshall says the landing strip on an aircraft carrier is kind of short.
I had about 600 feet.
Landing was fast.
Kind of gives you a little joke, but it's not bad. It's not as bad as the catapult. You know, in jets, we had the catapult off. So that's a really kick in the fanny there.
Marshal Ewing and Tyler. I'm Tumbleweed Smith with The Sound of Texas. I'm Tumbleweed Smith, picking apples in the fall. Details in a moment on The Sound of Texas. Marshal Ewing of Tyler has traveled in his RV all over the U.S. and Canada.
A neighbor who was an RVer came by my house one time and saw my rig and came over and wanted to look at it close to Labor Day. Said, "You know what you and your wife ought to do? You ought to come out to Washington, Wenatchee, and pick apples with us. There's a contingent of RVers who go out there every year, and you get free parking, free laundry, free utilities. You just park your rig up there and live in it, and we pick apples." We went to Wenatchee, and they have this orchard along the Columbia River, and they have Red Delicious, Golden Delicious, Roan, Granny Smith. We started picking Red Delicious and wound up with Granny Smith. That was hard work. We had a 3-legged ladder that you could put into the center of that tree where you could get up to pick those apples up close to the top. The boss said, "Now, I don't want you up on that top rung because it's dangerous." So what did I do the first day out? I got on that top rung to pick some pretty big apples right in the very top and fell off. I fell down through the middle of that tree and broke finger, but I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want them to ground me. So I just picked with that broken finger for the rest of the season. We had a great time. We'd get out there about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'd pick till about noon. Then we'd take a lunch. We took lunch and sat down and had our lunch and ate a few apples. Then we'd knock off about 4 and come back, and we'd all have happy hour around the rig up there. We picked for 23 days. My wife and I picked 96,000 pounds of apples. Those big bins, they're 4 by 4 by 30, and they'll handle almost 1,000 pounds of apples. And we picked 106 bins of apples. That was quite an experience. It really was. We got paid. Well, I think we made about $1,000. It was fun. Met a lot of neat folks, and I've kept up with a few of them.
Marshal Ewing of Tyler. I'm Tumbleweed Smith with the sound of Texas.